Good morning, everybody. It's Jeff Goldberg for the Sales Pro Network. I'm a sales coach and sales management coach and trainer. I work with individuals and organizations all over the world to help them get measurable and sustainable sales increases. And I founded the Sales Pro Network here on Facebook to do one thing and one thing only: help you increase your income. Well, I lied. Two things: help you increase your income and to elevate the profession of sales. As you know, if you remember, I founded it because I wanted salespeople to have a place where they can learn, where they can share their successes, their challenges, come and get great coaching from not just me, but I have a lot of my competitors on here, as well as today's guest, who's an expert sales coach. And it's every Friday we do either a live interview with somebody who can add value to the profession of sales, or I do a live training. And today is no exception. We're a little earlier than usual, but it's my pleasure to bring to you an awesome sales coach, Dean Ray of Sales Gym. Good morning, Dean.
Good morning, Jeff, and thanks for accommodating the little earlier start time with me. I appreciate that.
No problem. I'm really excited to be speaking with you today. So I'm wondering if before we get started on the million questions I wrote for you, could you just tell everybody a little bit about your background and how you got to the point where you became a sales coach?
Yeah, of course, Jeff. So obviously, everybody, my name is Dean Ray, and I've been a sales coach for the last few years. And my journey really started whenever I was in the Marine Corps. And in that world, I flew in attack helicopters. And with that, you end up in a lot of really high pressure, high consequence situations, right? So one of the things we figured out how to do is kind of figure out what goes into a great flight, right? So we figured out what goes into a great flight. We kind of broke those things in their smaller component parts. We drilled those things consistently until we got great at them. Then when we put them back together, we were able to kind of focus on what's happening around us instead of what's actually happening in the cockpit, right? So whenever I got out, I ended up going to business school, got involved in the business world for a while. And I ended up bumping into Michael and Emily, who founded the Sales Gym. And in talking with them, I found they had a really, really similar approach to training as I took to working in that environment there. But instead of flights, it was meetings. So they figured out what goes into great meetings. They kind of broke those things apart. They figured out ways to drill those things. And then that just really appealed to me, given my background. And now whenever we work with people, we find that they get in situations where, instead of listening to respond, and you're kind of finding yourself getting something that you latch onto in conversations, 20, 30 seconds later, you're formulating a response still in your kind of goldfish brain. You can avoid those outcomes by, drilling yourself and getting really good at the talking points that you're working on a day-to-day basis. So that's kind of what attracted me to this world, was recognizing I saw something that worked, that was really effective for me, gave me a ton of confidence in that world where the pressure was high. And I knew in sales, the pressure's high on people. You have to react, respond. So I really like the idea of kind of getting in here in this new life and kind of focusing in that area. So that's kind of my background, Jeff, and that's why I'm at where I'm at right now.
Got it. Well, you certainly sound passionate about it. And if you're watching us live, please say hello. If you did not connect your Facebook to StreamYard, please say hello and say who you are. And good morning, Fran Cole-Hebler, down in Texas. She says, good morning, Jeff and Dean.
Good morning.
How did training with Marine helicopter crews influence your both selling and coaching style? Because that's a high pressure job and risky, life and death. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because first of all, thank you for your service. I have the greatest respect for anybody who actually takes the time to do that and gives of their life. I missed the Vietnam War by a minute. I was not looking. I was not looking to go. I was definitely not looking to go to Vietnam and fight guys in black pajamas. So thank goodness the war ended the year I was supposed to go. But tell me a little bit about that. What was that like, and how did that influence your selling and coaching style?
Well, I appreciate that, and thanks for paying for college. So I would say that one of the biggest things that influenced me in that environment is I realized how much comfort and confidence makes a difference in your performance. Whenever I first got into my role, flying an attack helicopters, there's a lot of complicated parts that go into that, and so it was scary. It was an intimidating thing, and I remember my first time I flew and I shot a minigun. It's 3,000 rounds a minute. There's 100+ rotating components going on, and there's a lot that can go wrong. So my first night flight, we went out, went to go shoot it, and it was low lights. There was no visibility. You couldn't see anything, and I got a gun jam. So about 15 minutes into trying to clear this thing, I was just absolutely useless. I felt like I needed to give up. My instructor slapped me in the helmet, took over, cleared the jam for me, shot out all my rounds, made fun of me, and we landed. And, it was a good time. Let's make fun of Dean. But we were deploying to Afghanistan in just a few months. So that kind of behavior, that can't be tolerated, right? We can't have those kind of mistakes. My entire peer group was kind of in that situation because we were a little late to the party as far as joining the unit before we were actually going to go have to, go where it matters. So what we did was we kind of looked at that. We realized that we needed to work a lot on those gun jams. So our instructor base, they gave us a bunch of dummy rounds we could play with that, we couldn't shoot off. And every day after work, we spent an hour just clearing jams over and over again, different types of jams repetitiously. Then we ended up doing it with blindfolded, and we kind of did it over and over again. And then whenever I actually got deployed, and the first time I had to do it, whenever I was in combat and things mattered, I was able to clear a gun jam and in 30 seconds get it back up and in the fight. So going through that experience, I kind of realized that it was something that was really scary for me at first, like dealing with the minigun, how complicated it was. But because I exposed myself to that over and over again in a situation where it didn't matter, just kind of in practice by myself, I was able to be prepared whenever it did matter. And that's kind of informed my approach in life ever since. Obviously, that's kind of what we do a lot in the sales training with the world I live in now. But anytime I'm going to anything important, be it interviews like this, or going to have conversations with people who are important to me in my social life, I'll kind of think through, hey, what am I expecting things to come up with? What talking points should we be worried about? And I'll actually say some of those things out loud and kind of get ready for it. And I find that puts me in a more confident and comfortable place. And it's just, I don't know, put me in a better position in life because I focus on things like that.
So you did just deploy to Afghanistan?
Yes. And what's going on right now there is it's pretty sad. It's, I honestly think it was inevitable, but it's just kind of sad watching it all play out. But yeah.
Yeah, I really want to stick with sales, but you want to give just a few moments thoughts on what's going on, and are we doing the right thing? What's your take on it?
Yeah. I mean, sales show, but I'll dig into that because I think it's really topical right now. I'll say whenever I was flying over, I was there in 2012, and around the 2010, 2011-ish timeframe, Marines fought really hard to take Marja. A lot of people, were killed. A lot of people died for that kind of stuff. And when I was flying over in 2012, I was looking down, and we were flying over Marja, and it was basically all Taliban controlled again. And there was a lot of, guys setting up leadership meetings, and we weren't allowed to do anything because we had no U.S. presence on the ground there. And I realized kind of in that moment that we didn't have enough people to do this nation building activity we were essentially doing, without saying we were doing it. And so we were taking the Sangin district at that time. And I knew already while we were doing it all, like, as soon as we leave, this thing's going to get taken. And sure enough, 2014, 15, Sangin got retaken. And then the bases that we were at got taken over just a couple of years later. So in my mind, we came there with the purpose to deal with Osama bin Laden, and then we ended up getting into the nation building exercises. And we just didn't do enough resources to do that. So either way, like, if we would have, I would have been fine if we were nation building, fine if we left. Either way, I didn't care. But we didn't devote the resources towards the mission that we ended up taking on. And then as a result, it kind of collapsed. Everything collapsed just as you guys are seeing right now. Unfortunate, it's gone down the way it has. It's been a pretty messy withdrawal. But overall, I would say just this general outcome, maybe not exactly how it's occurring, but this general outcome was probably inevitable.
Gotcha. As I said, I did not serve, but I've seen a lot of movies. Would I be correct in saying it's FUBAR?
Yeah. yes, you would. It's, we stepped in the middle of, it's been an ongoing conflict there for generations. We thought we could solve it, but we just, you can't unless you devote, I'm talking a few 100,000 people there for 20, 30 plus years. And it's fair enough that nobody's, we're not willing to make that commitment.
Yeah, probably should have learned our lesson from the Russians who tried to do it before us.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, I concur.
Let's move back to selling and coaching. By the way, Facebook user who said good morning and gave a peace sign. If you didn't connect to StreamYard, then I don't know you are. So please put in your name. And again, if I didn't say it before, if you watch us on the replay, please put replay in the comments. And if you have any questions for Dean as we're talking, please put them in, and I'd be happy to ask them for you. So we were talking just a little bit before we started broadcasting about sales management, and most sales managers are not really terrific at their job. I certainly have met many that are awesome at their job, but many are not. And why do salespeople receive ineffective coaching from their sales managers? And how can a sales manager become a better coach?
That's a good question. I think it's oftentimes sales managers just aren't sure what to do. Many of them end up in their roles just because they are excellent at sales, and they end up getting promoted because they're top performers. The problem is, just because you're a top performer doesn't mean you know how to teach what your methods were. And oftentimes those top performers, it's purely personality based. They've got some special secret sauce within them that it's not translatable to teaching. And so one of the things that I think a lot of sales managers do is is they just have conversations about what what their sales process looks like with their sales teams, and they don't actually spend much time actually in practice, kind of working on the the meat and potatoes conversations they're having. Instead of being constantly looking backwards and criticizing what happened before and constantly being numbers focused, what would serve a lot of sales managers is to focus on, hey, what are your meetings coming ahead? What's your game plan? What's your North Star in that meeting? What are you trying to get accomplished? All right, now explain to me how you're going to get from point A to point B to point C in order to accomplish that goal. And then as you kind of plan together and game plan out these most important meetings, you can actually do a little role play and kind of talk through those conversations. That way, again, you can build up that comfort and confidence with your salespeople. So when they go into the meetings, they feel as if they have a strong game plan. And whenever they get those tough questions their way, you guys have already worked through that. And they're able to work through those questions easily in those meetings rather than it being a stumper and kind of killing off those conversations. So there's a lot of things, but I would say that's probably the biggest element.
So much like working on the minigun blindfolded in the dark, it's that practice.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep beating this point up the whole interview, Jeff. But yeah, that's pretty much it. We've had the name Sales Gym for a reason. You show up to a gym every day, you lift the weights, you put in some resistance on your body, you get a little stronger. Same things happens with your mind. And sales is a performance job. I know a lot of people just kind of view it as like part of the business function, and we don't really think about it as like performers, like you would, somebody doing a piano recital or play or, going out to play sports or whatever. But that's what you're doing. You're performing live in front of an audience, and anything you do out there, you can't take back, right? It's already happened. And for every other, career field where you're performing in front of people, you get a ton of training. You spend the majority of our time in training with a little bit of time performing in front of others. But that's not how we do it. We spend all of our time in front of people, and most people don't practice at all. And even if they do practice, it's very minimal. So I would say, like, the more salespeople can start viewing themselves as these performers and start practicing their actual craft, their skills, the easier it's going to be in front of people. There's that old military saying I'm sure you've heard, the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. It really does apply to what people do in the sales world. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah, as you mentioned, that I'm rehearsing right now to do stand-up comedy for the first time in 28 years. Right. I've been studying for 8 weeks and rehearsing to do 7 minutes. And there's no way I could just walk onto a stage and do 7 minutes of stand-up without the 8 weeks that's coming before it. It's so many people seem to have the attitude that oh, you go to the gym, I did 10 reps. All right, I'm pumped.
Right.
Not the way it works.
No.
It's like motivation. You get a dose of it, you're real pumped up for a little while, but you need it constantly, and you need to train and coach and practice regularly. So I love what you're saying. The latest book from your organization is Compete Selling. Can you tell us a little bit about what is Compete Selling?
Yeah, so what it is, it's blending the consultative selling. I think a lot of people, really got familiar with along the years with some challenger selling, right? The problem with the challenger sale, which we've come to believe is really a critical part of how selling should go. The problem is it tends to be a little blunt, and a lot of people don't have the EQ to necessarily pull that off. So we've kind of figured out, how do you ensure that most people can adopt the system? And we kind of wrote a book on what we've studied on the top performers we've worked with over the years and how that's kind of informed our system, our way of thinking. And it's really about blending this idea of figure out what people actually need, be that consultant, figure out what it is their goals are, what their issues are, have those deep conversations, and where you see opportunities, challenge them with what you're seeing out there, what you're seeing other people doing in the business world. Bring that into this discussion, change your thinking a little bit. And instead of it being a hard sell where you just kind of shove it down and try to drown them with things, you just let them know what they're not knowing, and you engage in an open conversation to hopefully get them to see the picture you're painting. So that's a really big part of our philosophy. Yeah,
that's what selling's all about. It's a conversation or a series of conversations leading to help the other person choose to do business with you. I say this all the time. It's not about your pitch. It's not about your closing skills. It's how to have a great conversation. And most people are simply not very good at that because they think selling is about, hi, I'm Jeff Goldberg. Let me tell you why I'm the greatest sales coach or sales trainer in the world.
Yep. Exactly.
You throw up all over them. I feel the same way as you do about the challenger sale. When I read the book, I was like, holy crap, this is great stuff and incredibly difficult to implement for most people. Yep. It's brilliant, but it's tough. The book was really designed for them to sell their sales training, but it's a great methodology, just expensive. Typically only an enterprise organization can implement it. And even then, you said it, most people don't have the EQ for it. So how do you combine consultative selling, which is, I think, what most people know, you got to be asking questions, with the challenger and make it more user friendly?
I think that has to do with our method of actually training, right? So we're a little different than a lot of sales training organizations in one particular way, and that's a time frame that we work with people. I think why a lot of people have trouble implementing Challenger, Consultative, any of these methods is oftentimes, you get 3 days of 10 hours a day training, and all the information's exceptionally good. Like almost every sales program I've ever came across has fantastic information, but how do you learn to implement it? I think people believe that taking on a new sales skill is largely about gaining knowledge and then just going out and applying it, right? But it's almost exclusively about applying it. So what we focus on is kind of building out some habits by training particular skills that are designed either towards that that Challenger sale focus or that consultative sale focus, and we teach them all separately. So people get really exceptionally good at those things, and then we slowly teach them how to integrate those things together. And then build up a long, strong conversation in one meeting that combines a lot of those consultative elements as you lead up to figuring out what it is they need to do. And then once you've got a really good, solid idea of what's happening in that organization, then you bring in some of those Challenger skills where you can let them know, hey, here's what you need to know, here's what you don't know, and here's what other people are doing who are just like you. So that's kind of the approach we take is we teach both skill sets, and then we teach people how to combine them in one meeting flow.
Yep. You talk about the need to develop verbal sales skills. Aren't most salespeople good verbally? And if not, how can they become better?
I think a lot of people might think they're good verbally, but if you were just to get a bunch of salespeople in the room and just say, hey, what is it you do that are better or different than everybody else out there, in your space, and you listen to the answers, you'd probably be pretty underwhelmed. So
I wouldn't, but yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So a lot of what we do is we figure out how to actually, teach people how to address those basic questions. And I think a lot of us just fly by the seat of our pants because we want to feel organic. We don't want to feel robotic, right? But there's a middle ground there. And the middle ground is teaching yourself some structures of your answers, right? So when you go into conversations with people and you feel a good flow back and forth, kind of like we have going right now, oftentimes you don't know why that is. You just know you had a good meeting. So what you can learn to do, and what we've learned to do, is identify what is it in your answers or in that conversation that made things flow so smoothly. And then what you do is once you identify those things, start doing them on purpose. Start building the way you talk around these different types of structures, around certain high level ideas that you think are important. And when you start adhering to those things, you're going to more consistently channel your own personality into conversations. And I think that's really the key. Nobody wants to buy from a robot. People want to buy from people. They want to buy people, they like, they trust, they think are competent. And if you focus a lot on developing your ability to be consistent with your messaging, not just like exactly, I'm going to say the exact words in a script, but like I'm going to use this exact style, you just become more consistent and better at what you do day to day.
I have to go back a second because I love what you said about training as an event. You spend a day or 2 or 3 days with a team. I can't tell you how many times I've had this conversation with my prospects, like typically a VP of sales at a large organization. Look, you want me to come in and train your team? While I may not be the very best in the world, I'm way up there. I'm excellent at this. I can train your team. However, you're going to get nothing out of it. The only thing that's going to happen is you're going to pay my mortgage. I'll be very entertaining. I'll be very engaging. I'm going to give them great information, but you're going to get maybe a blip, and that's not what you're looking for. The reason you want to work with somebody like you, Dean, or like me, is because you want your sales to go up steadily, and that doesn't happen. This is not a magic wand. I don't have magic words. But what does work is training with coaching, training with reinforcement. That's what I love about what the sales gym's doing. It's not about, I'm going to come in and train you for a day. It's good. I'm going to work with you ongoingly. Yes?
Oh, yes. It's largely about developing a practice mentality around the organization where people understand that they are performers, that they do need to practice, and they know what they need to practice because they feel confident in their systems, their structures, the talking points that are being brought down, and then just getting them to implement and get comfortable with it. Because practice is not comfortable. Like, it is not fun to role play, especially if you're doing it in front of your peers. And I know some organizations, like, they're big fans of, pulling people up to do role play in front of 70 or 100 people. And like, that's terrifying for a lot, for an audience. So I think largely a big thing that we do is we train people to be comfortable with getting into practice and kind of preparing for meetings in that way. And then we train the managers alongside them. So the managers learn what it is we're doing and they learn to assume our roles. So we get them basically prepared over the course of the 10-ish weeks we work with them, where everybody feels good, they feel comfortable with the way they talk, their systems, their structures, and then the managers kind of learn to take over our role and continue that progress moving forward. And I think without this idea of developing a practice culture in your company, I don't really think there's any other great way for you to develop your salespeople other than that, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's crucial that we help people become comfortable with being uncomfortable, because it is. Look, with your years of expertise, look, I've been doing this for 48 years. Every time I have to role play in front of somebody, I'm nervous too. It's like, holy crap, I don't want to screw up.
That's right.
I don't want to say the wrong thing, especially in front of 70 people. That would suck. And we have this built-in fear of looking bad, looking stupid, looking wrong. But there's nothing better than putting yourself into the fire. It's how you learn. It each and every time that you get up and do that, even though you might look like an idiot, you might blow it, and you might stutter and do whatever else happens, you're learning every single time, and it makes you tougher. That one hit just doesn't make it. It's over. The example I always give, and I'm actually not a sports fan at all, zero, but I know that football players, a guy who makes $20-30 million a year for throwing a football 10 feet, and a guy who makes $10 or $20 million a year for catching it. Well, they don't just play the big game on Sunday or Monday or whenever they play it. They're practicing all week long. And what are they practicing? The fundamentals over and over and over till it's ingrained. My son, who is now 19, I think when he was 14 or something like that, he studied martial arts for a year, and I used to drop him off and I'd sit there and watch him. Every week was the same damn thing. Drilling over and over until they get that muscle memory and they can do it without thinking, like the movie Karate Kid, wax on, wax off.
Yep.
It's the only thing that works. And so why do you think salespeople hate role playing so much? And what can we do as coaches to help them embrace it?
Well, first off, it's just inherently uncomfortable and not fun. It just is. And another thing that makes it even worse is a lot of sales managers just push down direct scripts, and they just say, hey, memorize these exact words and repeat them to me verbatim, right? And nobody wants that, because nobody wants to come off like a robot. They want to talk like themselves. So that's why there has to be more of general structures and principles that sales managers push, and general talking points they push. But people need to be able to put that in their own words, and they need to be able to envision a partner in front of them who's somebody they're actually meeting with day to day. So if they can envision a specific partner, create context, they can put things in their own words, and they just know a general structure is going to help make them better, but they can still be themselves. You're going to see less resistance. And something you talk to, right? This being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Have you read the book The Talent Code by chance?
The what?
The Talent Code?
I don't think so.
So it's a book about why people are exceptional, why you see clusters of, great people, coming out of different regions. And what it almost always comes down to is people put in a ton of work, a ton of hours that stretch them to the edges of their abilities and the edges of their comfort levels. And when they do that, you develop a protein in your brain called myelin. And myelin helps kind of form new neural pathways that enable you to do things more efficiently, more effectively, and it kind of changes your way of thinking. So what you have to do is realize, just like when you go to the gym, you lift weights and you're building a muscle, you're doing the same thing when you're taxing yourself mentally, stressing yourself in these role play situations. And so I want to emphasize that first, it's going to be very uncomfortable to learn techniques like that. I liken it to, you were talking about repetition in martial arts. I liken it to an analogy I like to use, because I come from playing baseball my whole life, is learning how to swing a bat, right? So when you first learn, you're keeping your elbow up, and that's what you get told, right? Keep your elbow up. And that's all you can think of is, am I doing this? Am I doing this? And the ball keeps flying past you, and you don't even see it half the time. But after you've gotten a few swings in like that, and you stop thinking about keeping your elbow up as much, right? Now you're more keeping bat to ball. That's what you start focusing on. And the same thing will happen if you start, forcing yourself to get through the dirty work in the beginning of learning a new technique, learning a new approach on how you want to deliver your message. It's going to feel awkward at first. You're going to feel like you're just trying to hit your marks, and that's all you're focused on. But pretty quickly, after you get a feel for your sequences and you have comfort and confidence with those sequences, you're going to move away from just focusing on the technique, and you're going to focus way more on your actual messaging itself. And that's really where the magic starts happening, because now you figured out an effective way to channel your personality, where you consistently give answers that are good, that you feel confident in, that you know are well structured, but you're able to channel your own self into that in ways that are creative. And so you don't sound the exact same. Even whenever you're delivering the exact same pitch over and over again, you're going to have variations in there, because it's you coming through, not a script. So I would say that's a really critical part of developing that comfort is knowing it's going to be uncomfortable at first, So doing everything you can to kind of lower the inhibitions of people to make them feel okay in that spot. And then once they start going into these techniques, develop a lot of comfort with them, a lot of confidence with them. So people know, hey, once I get this down, I won't have to even think about the technique anymore, and I'm going to sound excellent. So it's all about building confidence like that.
I love what you're saying about, it doesn't have to be a script. People often come to me, and I'm sure they do to you. Just tell me the magic words and I'll say them, Jeff. Yeah, I have the magic words that work for me, but I'm a wisecracking Jew from New York, and that might not work for you in Oregon. Yeah, I can give you overall ideas and techniques, but you've got to sound like you. I always suggest to salespeople, when you're prospecting or selling, it should sound like you're having a conversation with your best friend, minus the profanity.
Yes. That's one thing I always tell people, right? Cut out the jargon. Like, how would you explain this to me if I was your aunt? Like, explain that to me, right? And that's another thing, right? I'm sure you've seen a ton of this. A lot of people talk with the assumption that everybody knows what they're talking about. They understand the jargon, the acronyms, everything that they're sending across. And people don't like feeling stupid, so they won't let you know they don't know what you're saying oftentimes. So, the more basic you can, the more in layman's terms you can explain a lot of the concepts that you think are important, I think the more likely it is that people are going to understand them. And something that I kind of want to get your take on is what we found is pretty much all decisions are made now by committee. So the person you're talking to on the phone is generally not the person who's going to be making the call on whatever it is. So what we kind of train people to do is make sure when you're explaining things, you do it in a simple way. Ideally, tell a story that's really simple and has, a problem, a decision, and a resolution that explains your value proposition, that is, bite-sized, that the person on the other end can understand, because they're going to go back and they're going to say, hey, we should go to this meeting because X, Y, or Z. And if X, Y, or Z isn't clear, it's not concise, it's not easy to repeat, it's going to be muddled in your messaging. And, more than likely, you're not going to get them on board. Where if you can just tell a quick, easy story saying, hey, business like yourself, here's the issue they had, here's what they decided to do about it, here's what they got, that's really easy to relay for somebody. And it makes a huge difference. So what have you seen as far as, like, because you've been in this game for a while, like a transition from, this like single decision maker mindset to this committee approach? Like, what have your observations been in that world?
Yeah, I'm with you 1,000,000%. You've got to keep it simple. And too many times salespeople want to dazzle the prospect with their brilliance. I'm a smart guy. I don't need to impress anybody with my intelligence, though. I need to have a good conversation. That means it's got to be understandable on both sides. I've got to be able to communicate in a way that the prospect understands it. And one of the challenges I find is that most people in life and in sales, they take responsibility for only one side of the conversation. I'm speaking, you've got to understand it. Except in sales, we cannot do that. We've got to take responsibility for both our speaking and the prospect's understanding. Because if you're the most brilliant salesperson in the world, if the prospect's going, what the F is he talking about? You're lost. It does. It's not that I almost said it doesn't pay to be smart, but it's not about being smart. Certainly be intelligent, be coherent, but speak to people. I like the way you said it. Speak like you're speaking to your best friend, like you're talking to your grandma. Explain things simply. I often say that sales is not rocket science. You only need half a brain to be in sales, but you do need half a brain.
Yeah.
Good morning to Steve Kent, by the way. Good morning to Vipal, all the way from India. Good morning, Randy Clark from Randy Clark CLT. I don't know where this. I think that's your title, not where you are. And a Facebook user has said, "Oh, there we go. Hold on, let me see if I can bring this up for us. There we go. Dazzle them with brilliance or baffle them with bullshit."
Yes.
Facebook user, I don't know who you are, but please put your name in so that we can laugh with you on that one. I'd like to move over to another topic which I'm passionate about regarding selling. Sales to me is not about the pitch or the close. It's about asking great questions and being an effective listener. And most salespeople, and I know that being in the business, you'll understand this technical term I'm about to use. Most salespeople suck at listening. They're horrendous listeners. Why are we so bad at listening, and how can we become better at it?
That's just like, it's a basic human trait. I think we love just being able to talk to people about ourselves, about the thing that we have. Like, it's just like, look at me mentality. I think we all develop as children because we want attention, and then we just never really grow out of it. And so there's I think it's a Stephen Covey quote that says, seek to be understood, or seek to understand before you seek to be understood. And you need to start approaching life that way. Like everybody does. And this isn't just a selling principle. This is something I've seen in personal lives that's just exceptionally powerful. for example, and I'm gonna reiterate this. Like, this is right here is a huge key to this. Like, just the mindset shift. But I was with my buddy, and he was on a second date with a girl, and we were going floating down a river. Right. This was a few weeks back, and this was the first time I'd seen them interact with each other. So I was just kind of floating by him, and I was like, I wonder how this date's gonna go. 90% of the conversation was him driving things about himself towards her the whole time. And I saw her at first she was interested, but about halfway into the float, I could see her attention waning. And I was like, I know what's happening here. So I didn't say anything, right? Next morning, I met my buddy at the gym. We go to the gym every morning at 5:30. I was like, hey, man, how'd the date go? He's like, oh, yeah, she just didn't text me back after I dropped her off, kind of gave me a cold shoulder. Like, I don't know what happened. I was like, who's to say, bud? But what happened there was he wanted her to understand everything about himself, because I think that's just all inherently want people to know who we are. But if you start from that foundation of I'm just going to project everything about me, people tune out, they lose interest, because the fact that maybe we don't want to admit in this world is we only care about ourselves. So if you know that, then go ahead and lean into what people care about. Figure out what it is they're passionate about. Ask them questions about their lives. Whenever it comes to the business world, ask them about their goals, what the problems they're dealing with. Like, build a relationship and actually care about them. Be genuinely curious about them. And what you're going to find, and what I found in the vast majority of cases, after 5-10 minutes of being extremely interested and showing genuine curiosity, people are like, I like this person. They kind of impress me, and they start wanting to know about you. So whether that's personal relationships, you're going to form deeper relationships that way. And if it's in sales, they're going to want to know about your product, your service, what it is you do well, because they just had a great conversation with you. You were interested in them, and you let them say their piece and feel understood. So that's a really, really critical part of this.
Yeah. Dale Carnegie, in his famous book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, said it's better to be interested than interesting. And I work on both the mind game and the skills game in selling. We talk a lot about effective listening with my coaching clients. And I find way too often people are listening when they're selling. They're listening so that for the other person to finish so that they can get out their next bit of brilliance, instead of listening to truly understand what the prospect's saying. It's listening for, I wish you would shut up so I could speak again.
Right.
Instead of, what is this person saying? What is the person trying to say? How does this fit in with what I already know? And how can I use this to help them better? And the other thing is, it's never about us. It's just not. It's always about them. There are some things, I have been doing this a long time, and many things have changed over almost 5 decades, but one thing that hasn't is WIFM. We got to find the what's in it for them, not for us. Yes, for us, it's get a client and make some money, but it's really about, it's that come from, I say, deep inside your belly of, how can I serve you? I say that we have to have a servant mentality. And if we're just talking instead of listening, we're screwed. And here's my true belief, that if you ask the right questions and actively listen, that the prospect will tell you everything you need to know in order to help them choose to do business with you each and every time. Doesn't mean you're going to close everything. Nobody does. But you're going to close way more business than, hi, thank you so much for your time. Let me tell you why we're the greatest coaching and training firm in the world.
Yep.
I call it throwing up on the customer's shoes. It doesn't work. Well, it works. It just doesn't work as well as what you are talking about. Truly being interested in them. You do a lot of rehearsing for sales calls. You talk a little bit before about, we don't really look at the past. How do you help somebody rehearse for a sales call that hasn't happened yet?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what we teach, we kind of have a module that's specifically about doing this. But what we generally teach people to do whenever it comes to, preparing for an important meeting. Now, granted, this isn't every meeting, right? Some meetings, you don't have much time to prepare. You're super busy, whatever. But some of them are high priority, right? You have to put in the time and the effort. For those meetings, there's a few things that are critical. First off, have a North Star. Like, know what you're actually trying to get done in that meeting. And make sure everybody who's on your team knows what you're trying to do in that meeting. Like, if I was to break you all out, put you in rooms and ask you police interrogation style, hey, like, at the end goal of this meeting, what does success look like? If you achieve success, what happened? I'm going to get different answers almost every time. So that shouldn't happen, right? So first things first, know what you're trying to do. The next piece we were just touching on, know what questions you can ask them to lead them to that end goal. So kind of think through, all right, I know I want to end up here, so I'm going to plan backwards and think, all right, what questions can I ask them to get me to tell them about their goals, get me to tell them about, or to get them to tell me about their problems, things like that. So I can develop a series of bullet points that they've given me saying, here's what I want to get done. Here's the issues and why I haven't got it done. and that you can assign that set of bullet points to this, solution you're bringing at the end, your North Star, saying, hey, this is what we brought in to fix that. With that in mind, there's going to be some questions coming your way, right? So you've had this conversation, I'm assuming, if you're trying to make this pitch, probably several times. So typically what questions come your way. So actually know how you're going to answer those questions, right? Figure out what's going to come your way most likely. Say those things out loud a few times. That way, when you're in the moment and they start asking you that question, you're not racking your brain trying to figure out where I'm going next. It's just on autopilot. Whenever it comes to closing out meetings, what we found top performers close with the majority of the time is a great success story to illustrate, again, a problem, decision, resolution dynamic, so people can understand, one, other people are doing this. You're not just trying to sell me on it. And two, other people are doing this, and this isn't a novel idea. This is something you can just throw me on a conveyor belt and get predictable results on. With that in mind, you have to have a great agenda set up to be able to kind of set up those client expectations and enable you to really visualize the flow of how your meeting's going to go. So if you don't have a good agenda, or if you don't set agendas, like, fix that now. And then the last thing I would say is, we all have this stretch goal. We all know where we want the meeting to go, but I think it was Eisenhower who said that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. So keep that in mind, that this probably isn't going to go according to plan. So have a fallback goal. The majority of the time, what that is you want to set up a meeting about X, Y, or Z to continue that conversation and hopefully convince them down the road. So when you're about halfway, 2/3 of the way in your meeting, where that thing's going to go. If you got them on the hook, if you don't. So start making a hard push in either direction, either towards that stretch goal, that North Star, or that fallback goal that is going to lead to productive conversations later. So those are some really critical elements for preparing for a meeting.
That's great. Yeah, I always advise salespeople that before you go on a sales call, ask yourself this question: what information do I need to get today in order to consider the sales call successful? When you know what information you need to get, you can now plan for what questions you're going to ask. And you said it before, if you've been in sales for more than 2 weeks, you've heard every objection you're going to hear. You've been in every situation. It's not like there's a million objections that people get. There's usually, in my experience, no more than 2 or 3, maybe 5 that people are going to hear over and over. I can't remember the last time I heard a new objection. I just can't remember because there are only a few. So it comes back to that preparation. If you think about it in advance and you're prepared for it, then you're going to have that much more smooth conversation, instead of when somebody throws you something, you go, hold on a second. Well, I think of an appropriate rebuttal for that one. I think that was on page 21 in the training. There's no time for that. You got to get into it. Now, you said something else that it's kind of a controversial topic. You talked about agendas, and I know the sales Jim is very big on setting agendas. I've spoken to salespeople who would never use an agenda no matter what, and some who say you've got to have an agenda, and I know you feel that way. Can you speak a little bit about the importance of agendas, and how do you put a good one together, and how do you share it with your prospect?
Yeah, so agenda setting is all about setting expectations for both yourself and your team, and then the clients you're meeting with. And one thing I found, life is largely about is managing expectations and setting those out. Now, what you ideally want to do, if you can, is share your agenda ahead of the time with the prospect. That way they can add to it, edit it as they see fit, because as we discussed earlier, who cares about what you think? It's about what they think and what they want, right? With that in mind, every agenda that we lay out, it always starts with a listen, understand first agenda, right? Ask, listen, understand. So if your agenda items are laid out and it's just like, hey, first I'm going to talk about me, next I'm going to talk about my products, next I'm going to talk about my other products, and finally we'll have questions, you're probably going to be in a lackluster sales call. But if you start off your agenda by saying, hey, first we're going to kind of discuss, what are some of your goals? What are some of the things you've been trying to achieve? Then we're going to talk through some issues about, what it is that you haven't been able to do, why you haven't been able to get there. And then I can share with you what's working well from other people based on what you tell me. You set up an agenda in that tone, you're going to be able to pull some really good information from them, start a conversation early, get like a human-to-human connection going. And then whenever you start bringing ideas in near the end of it, then people are actually going to listen to you, because they'll feel as if you brought something that was a fit for them, not that you came in with a plan and tried to shove, something, a square peg in a round hole. There's one simple thing I would say, like, if you don't like agendas, do a really informal, abbreviated one, right? It doesn't have to be this super formal, giant spiel that feels like you just put a tie on if that's not what you're doing, right? It can just be real laid back. Hey, I thought we'd touch this, this, and this. And the most critical element here, just ask them at the end, hey, what would you like to cover that I haven't listed so far? Get their feedback. That way, if there's an elephant in the room that they haven't brought up, or something's changed in the meantime since you last talked, they're not getting that like Charlie Brown voice going in the back of their head and completely ignoring you until they get a chance to spill it out on you. So Yeah, design your agenda with getting them talking in mind, and learn just to ask some questions and shut your mouth and listen to what they have to say.
Yep. Dennis, I think this is Dennis. I'm not sure Dennis who. I think it's Dennis Lombardi, perhaps. It says, "Don't show up and throw up." You're absolutely right, Dennis. Have a plan. One of the things that I find most salespeople suck at is forming that relationship initially. So, you're walking into typically a complete stranger. Maybe you've had a conversation on the phone, possibly via email. Maybe somebody set the appointment for you. You don't know, but you're either getting on a Zoom call, walking into somebody's office, or maybe it's the telephone, and you've got to establish rapport, because we already said earlier, people still do buy from people they trust and like. So what are your thoughts on some effective ways to begin a sales meeting? Because getting right down to business is what they want, and it's what you want. It's just not what works. I mean, right. I know I want to walk in, let's get right to business so I can get out to my next meeting. And that's what you want too. It just doesn't work well. We need to take that time to build a foundation that we can then grow every time we speak to somebody. But how do we initially break the ice and establish rapport?
So typically the way I approach new meetings when I'm meeting with a new client, I'll just start out by asking them, hey, tell me about your business. Is kind of get them to talk about the things they're passionate about. Then I ask them to tell me about their goals. What is it you're trying to achieve in your business? If they're willing to open the conversation up, I ask, hey, why haven't you accomplished some of those goals? What are some key areas that you could shore up? And then once you've kind of assembled that, you've shown a genuine interest in what they're doing and what they're trying to do. And now they're willing to kind of hear you out and what it is you're doing, what you're trying to do. And it sounds repetitious, but always start off by seeking to understand them and have some genuine curiosity. There's no tips I could give you that would be any more help than just saying, be genuinely curious about what other people have to say, and be genuinely curious about how they're structuring the business and what their issues are. And when you do that, and they can see that, people can feel that energy. When people see that and feel that, they want to share with you what's going on in their lives because they're passionate about it. And when you engage with somebody in their passion, you're not trying to push them with an agenda and a direction. You're not, being constantly salesy and all that stuff. Then people are going to be open to you and they're going to like you and they're going to realize, all right, this person, they want to understand what's happening here to make sure what they're giving me is a fit for me. They're not just coming in here trying to shove a product down my throat. And if you can establish that relationship, and instead of changing it from a seller, being sold dynamic to, I'm an industry expert, I'm kind of seeing all these things out here. I want to see what's happening with you just so I can share some advice with you, give you an idea if this is a fit or not. You can kind of create that dynamic. You're going to establish really good relationships, and whether or not you get the sale, they're going to like you and they're going to trust you. And that's really a critical part of this.
Yeah, we're certainly sharing similar concepts. What I share with salespeople is to go in and be interested in them. And the way I do that, if you were a vice president of sales, my first thing would be, hey, Dean, I'm really glad we could get together and invest some time to discuss increasing sales at your company. But before we get started, I'm just curious, how'd you get to be the vice president of sales here at SalesGym?
Perfect.
Every single time. And when I'm I sell different services, but when I'm selling sales training, I'm only talking to 3 titles. It's either a CEO, a company president, or a vice president of sales, or both: VP, EVP, SVP. Yep. These are busy people with a lot of stuff to do, but I have never failed to get somewhere between 4 and 7 minutes of them giving me their resume. I went to school here, and then I did this, and then I did that, then I did the other thing, and eventually it ends up with, and that's how I became the VP of sales here at SalesGym. And all I'm doing in that time, and what I'm teaching salespeople to do, is A, look people in the eye, blink occasionally, don't give them a stalker stare, but look them in the eye, nod your head, encourage them to talk further, take some notes occasionally, which shows them that what they're saying to you is important. And I make encouraging sounds. Really? No kidding. Why'd you do that? My experience is that the longer I get them to talk about themselves, their favorite subject, the more they unconsciously or subconsciously start thinking, this Jeff's not the typical salesperson. First of all, he didn't come in and thank me for my time, which I despise. Don't thank, guys, please don't thank your prospect for their time. They should be thanking you for your time. Earn that from them. Be so good on the sales call, care so much about them that they thank you for your time. But when you thank them for your time, when you first walk in, you're elevating them and you're lowering yourself. When you do that, why would they respect you? Why would they want to do business with you? Because what Dean is teaching, and I went on your website. I love what you guys are doing. It's how do we make it about them, and how do you establish yourself as an expert? How do you make it clear to somebody, I know what I'm talking about. You should listen to me.
Right.
And you can't do that if you're bowing down to people and thanking them for their time. Look, it's what we were all taught 40 years ago. The customer is always right. No, they're not. The customer is always the customer, but they're not always right. And you don't have to bow down to them. Why would somebody pay you or me a bunch of money to help them sell better if they didn't think we knew what we were talking about, which means they've got to respect us. So please, guys, stop doing that. What is a discovery summary?
Discovery summary. All right. So that's a good question. So a couple different things we teach is two different types of summaries as you go through your discovery process. So the first part is mini summaries, right? So as you're going through discovery, we like to kind of view discovery by topic. So when you come in, maybe have like 3 topic areas that you want to touch on in your discovery flows and have some questions to kind of anchor those topics. So that way, I'm going to start open-ended on this particular subject and it'll take it wherever I go. And then I can start open-ended here and take it, so on and so forth. Mini summaries you want to use in between to kind of summarize the bullet points you're hearing from topic to topic, just to kind of, bullet point out what happened for your memory and theirs, as well as what it does is it gives them a chance to give some clarity. Well, the discovery summary is once you're done with discovery, you've gone through all the pieces, you understand exactly what's happening, you feel like you don't have to ask any more questions. That's where you're saying, I'm done with discovery. I'm going to do a full summary of what I just heard here. And this is where you kind of typically you want the whole conversation to be a back and forth conversation flow, right? This is the point where you just kind of get that loud beeping duck truck, beep, beep. All right, let's stop this whole clock for a second. Here's what I heard from you. Let me know where you can give me some clarity or maybe where I missed some points. Let me know what's going on here. And you just lay out all those bullet points you've collected throughout the course of your discovery process, and then just get their feedback. Hey, what did I miss? What do I need to know? What can you guide for clarity? At that point, they're going to fill in any blanks you guys have. So you should be done with objections here. You should be in full territory. You guys understand each other. And then coming out of your discovery summary, you can start pitching them ideas and letting them know, hey, I'm done asking questions. It's time for us to move towards business because I know what you need now. So that's kind of what the function of the discovery summary is.
Yep. I love when I do research for these talks because I go on websites and I talk to folks like you and I go, oh yeah, they're teaching the same thing I am. They're just calling it something different. To me, that's a confirmation step. You've asked all your questions. You've got all the information you need. And now you're simply saying, if I heard you right, what you told me was blah, 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 because you want to make sure you're on the same page because to me, the next step is going to be my presentation or my proposal or my plan. I don't want to base my proposal on bad information. And there is often a big gap between what somebody says and what we hear or what we say and somebody else says. So that confirmation step, first of all, it's the quickest and easiest step. All you're doing is paraphrasing back what you think you heard, but it's a step that I rarely see salespeople do. Salespeople seem to be in a huge rush to present. We tend to think that our job is to be great presenters. And in my experience, sometimes the best salespeople are great presenters, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're strong closers. Sometimes they're not, but they're always great question askers, great listeners. And you said it before, great storytellers. You've got to be a great storyteller. And you called it something different than I do, but it's that story about somebody else like you who was in a similar situation, who worked with us and lived happily ever after. It helps people get past that. The way brain science works, which is we automatically think of the negative first. What if I hire Dean or what if I hire Jeff and it doesn't work out? What if I pay him all this money and put in all this time and it turns out to be one more BS investment? What if? And when we tell that story about somebody else like them in a similar situation who we did X, Y, and Z with, and here's how it worked out, people tend to relax and they go, oh, it worked out for them. Maybe it'll work out for me too.
That's exactly right. Again, that kind of goes to that perspective thing, right? People know who you are. They know what your angle is. And when you talk about things from your perspective, their defenses are up. You get a phone call and it's like, hey, how you doing this morning? Oh, I've got a salesperson. Instantly, my defenses are up, right? You can tell when you're being sold. You just feel it when it's coming from that perspective. But whenever you've had a conversation, you've listened to what they had to say, you've gone in depth on something, you've really sought to understand them. They know that, and you just start telling them, hey, based on my understanding, I just want to let you know what other people are doing, what their experiences are, and you can flesh out, hey, these problems you told me you have. Here's these problems. These other people, they've had those same problems. Here's what they decided to do about it, and here's what they're getting as a result. Makes them feel, oh, then I could just do that and get that result as well. So it makes it feel less salesy when you get into that conversation that way. So that's really important. And then 2, it creates predictability. People hate the idea that you're just going to throw them into something novel and you're going to get some unknown outcome. People love knowing, okay, if I do this, I'm going to get that. And that's better than where I currently am. All right, great. That's all I needed to hear. And so you create that dynamic. It's much more powerful that way.
Yeah, and that's right in line with something else that, as I was, studying you and your company, I was like, yes, exactly, that's exactly right. And it's that you're very big on statements like, our clients tell us, or my customers tell me. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think it's so crucial.
Yeah, the voice of the client's far more powerful than yours. We all know who you are. We all know what you're trying to do with us. We all know what you're trying to get accomplished there. And the best way to make your points, the very best way to make your points is figure out what are the 3 to 5 conversations, say I have a lot. What are some things that I'm hearing from my customer, my client base about these particular items, these particular things? Commit those stories to memory. So that way, whenever somebody brings something up to you, you can just let them know, oh, yeah, this is what happened with those particular people. That's that instance, right? And if you have those kind of things aligned for all these different subjects, you're never going to be in a position where you're talking with somebody and people feel defensive because they feel like you're pushing products and services on them. It's really as simple as this. I can list off 4 or 5 bullet points about a product or service and how it's great from my perspective, and I feel like I'm a corporate robot who's spitting out bullet points. But if I just take those exact same bullet points, same exactly as I did, but I put them within a story and say, here's what somebody else was doing, here's what they told me, then it feels like I'm telling a descriptive story. So I'm able to get all my talking points, all these competitive advantages boiled into the same 60 seconds I would have taken to give my own pitch, except I told a story there and somebody was like, wow, that was a really descriptive story and I understood what happened there, rather than, hey, stop hitting me over the head with all these value propositions. It really changes that dynamic.
Yeah. Well, look, the prospect knows that we have a vested interest in them doing business with us. We want to get paid. We have commission breath and they can smell that. So it's the same thing with marketing materials. I don't have any marketing materials. I have a website. That's it. I have 0 brochures to give out, because what would my brochures be? It's a bunch of nice stuff I say about me. And why should you trust me? Now, you should trust me because I'm a man of integrity. It's after my 3 kids. It's the most important thing in the world to me. But there's no reason you should believe that of a salesperson.
Right.
It just so happens that I'm an honest person, but you don't know that because you also know I'm a salesperson, which in most people's minds means I'm a thief and a liar and a cheat who will do and say anything to reach my hand into your pocket, pull out those green pieces of paper with pictures of dead presidents on them, and put them in my own pocket. That's not the case, but that's the way most people look at us. But when we tell them a story about somebody else, it becomes more real. Our customers tell us, my customers tell me. Then it's like, oh, it's not Jeff telling me, it's them. It's why if you go to my website, many of the pages have videos of my customers saying why they do business with me. Yeah, there's one on there of me saying it too, but I promise you that's not nearly as convincing as the customers going, here's why you should work with Jeff. Brilliant stuff. I'm just glancing at the clock, and I still have a million questions. We're quickly running out. I've got to get to this one. Your research shows that 70% of all salespeople make the same 4 mistakes over and over and over. And when I read the mistakes, I was like, duh, of course. What are those 4 mistakes, and how can people handle those?
So talking too much, just like we've been saying this whole time, not asking good, relevant questions. They're not really able to articulate a compelling value proposition. So if I pinned you in a corner in an elevator and said, hey, what is it you guys do better or different? Most people don't have a great pitch for that. And they don't have a great answer. And then finally, people don't have the ability to kind of guide a meeting towards an inevitable closing or next step process. Either they run out of time, they don't know what that looks like to get in that flow. Like, those tend to be the issues. And the real big issue here is most sales managers don't know how to address it. And so what you've got to do is you've got to, like we discussed earlier, figure out what goes into these great meetings. What does it look like to start with an ask, listen, understand first agenda, and practice those things? These are habits you form. These aren't like this isn't knowledge you have in your head that gets portrayed elsewhere. This is just habits you formed over years and years of doing the same things the same way. You've got to break these old habits and form new oons. And we know it takes 30 plus days to form a new habit. So figure out what it is you need to break your habits on. You talk too much. All right, how are you going to break that habit? All right, I'm going to start asking good questions and shutting up. Right? So you start practicing doing that day to day over and over again and forcing yourself into that habit until you eventually change your behavior. And ideally, you have some coaching alongside you to help you do that. But that's really the key, is focusing on what behaviors am I doing that are not advantageous, and how can I force myself into a daily habit to start breaking those? That's really the key.
Yeah. Talk too much. I mean, I can't tell you how often I see that. Or talk, ask questions, not listen to the answers. Right. Awful. There's a technique that I teach that helps a bit with that, called tell, ask. tell/ask. And I make people do this when I teach presentation skills. So we'll bring people up to the front of the room, and the program is just get up and do whatever presentation you normally do all day long. Don't make anything up. Just give whatever presentation you normally do. But after every feature, after every benefit, you must force yourself to ask a question. Force yourself, because if you're saying something and then asking a question, your prospect's going to be at least 50% talking, which is exactly what we want. I've heard a million times, you've got two ears and one mouth. The prospect should speak twice as much as you do. In almost 50 years of selling, I've never found a way to get my prospect to speak twice as much as me, but I can get them to speak as much as me if I'm asking good questions, which is, I think, what you're talking about when you talk about controlling the process. To me, that's how you control the sales process. Whoever's asking the questions is controlling the process. Yes?
100%. And use open-ended questions as well, right? Because if you ask yes, no questions, they can shut you down, take it wherever they want to go next. If you're asking open-ended questions, you're asking them to describe what it is, that they think about what you just brought up. You're engaging in that conversation. And once you get the response, you can get into, hey, here's my piece of that. I'm going to ask you another open-ended question and keep that flowing.
Yep. Steve Kent says stories are key. And also he likes the idea of a benefit followed by a question. And good morning, Don Levine, our executive recruiter from Westbury. Why do salespeople have such a difficult time communicating their competitive advantages? I mean, how can sellers better understand their own competitive advantages? Especially, I don't know about you, but I work with some companies that are fairly commoditized. So how do you come up with your competitive advantages? And how do you express those in a way that the other person, the prospect, goes, oh, I see?
Well, I think you just first got to figure out, what are you doing that other companies aren't? I mean, that's obvious, but what is your secret sauce that separates you? And then don't look at just the company talking point for that. I think that's where a lot of people fail, is they just look at, here's the bullet point I need to memorize, and they're not speaking about their true convictions. Like, figure out what your company talking points are, figure out what your products are, look into those in depth, figure out how your actual prospects, your clients are working with them. And then once you figure out how they're working with them, why they're successful, start talking about the things you feel conviction about, right? Like, this product is fantastic because of X, Y, and Z reasons that I'm hearing from this great group of clients. And this is what they repeatedly tell me. And if you believe in it, if you believe in what you're actually saying when you project it and you practiced it and you know what you're going to hit on, you're going to sound much better and far more compelling than, if you just read it off the website and you're like, hey, I got the check in the box. I said the value proposition. I know here. That just never comes off as genuine, and people can't say it with their chest, or if you really have gone through that, you've actually seen your clients use it and you know why it's benefiting them, you can say that with your chest. You can really feel it and say it with confidence, and it just changes how people take it, and it changes how you feel whenever you're saying it.
Yeah, it's crucial. Geez, I've got 18 million more questions, and we're really actually, you know what, we are out of time.
I got a session here in like 3 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. Dean, so great speaking to you. How can people get in touch with you if they want to? I'm going to share my screen right now. If people are interested in working with you, how can that happen?
Yeah, so just shoot me an email at dnr@salesgym.com, and I'll be sure to get back to you right away. And if you want to check out our website, we got that salesgym.com website. And you can go to our contact section as well if you just want to submit a request to, get an evaluation of your team, or just kind of check out what it is we're doing. And if you like what we had to say and you just don't feel as if, you want to jump into the sales coaching world just yet, we have some white papers on our website also you can download just to get some of the basic information we've talked about here. That's going to be extremely helpful for just kind of shaping your mentality. But I'm going to encourage all of you, whether you work with us or not, figure out what those 3 to 5 conversations you have on a consistent basis are. Figure out what you need to know and say in those conversations, and practice. Get that stuff down so it becomes second nature. And when you're in front of a client, you're not on your heels. You always feel like you can play on your toes and you can listen to what they have to say because you got your responses all in your back pocket.
Dean, thank you so much for sharing your brilliance generously with us today. I really appreciate it. I could talk to you all day, but I know you've got to run. I'll end as I always do. Guys, please remember, sales is a game of making things happen. So get out there today and make sales happen. See you, Dean. Go to your next appointment. See you, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Talk to you later, guys.
Bye.